Hello, everybody. Welcome back for episode 2 of Indie Insights for Roundtable Co-op. I am Straight Jacket Jim, your host here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the funding that's available for indie devs, because that's quite something that I think gets a little bit lost. Everybody goes, I really want to make a game. Cool, you start making the game, you get Unity and start coding or whatever program you're using to do that in. But I think because it's such a freely accessible thing, people kind of miss how we can go about getting the funding to turn this into something that you can do for a living. And especially when the global video game market was estimated to be around 200 billion in 2021. That's a huge amount of money in the industry. And seeing a lot of indie dev games kind of struggle a little bit because of that lack of an idea of how to grow and where to get investment from. I think that is a very big problem in the industry, and we're very glad here today to be talking to Mark Smith, the digital games manager for ScreenWest. So Mark, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So quickly, before we get into talking about what ScreenWest can do for indie game devs, I'd like to have a little bit of a chat about your role at ScreenWest and what ScreenWest actually does.
So sure.
Yeah, just let us know a bit about that.
No problem. So ScreenWest is a non-for-profit funding agency that provides funding for, production and talent growing and industry building, traditionally for the screen sector of film and TV. But for a little while now, they've been dabbling in the game space because it is such a big industry, as you said before. And my role, which is sort of a brand new full-time role, is the digital games manager. As we've seen, an uptake in the amount of interest in funding for video games. My role is now basically to create programs and manage programs that can help fund indie development, so that we can sort of build the WA games industry with a bit of financial support.
Yeah, that's amazing, because it like I said, it really is hard to get that leg up, especially when you're starting out. You're one person. You've probably got your main job that you're working, and you're working on your game project as a side to what your normal income is, and it probably just starting out. People don't quite understand how long this takes. Like I'm looking at a list of games that you've got. They got the Digital Games Production Fund. These recipients were announced back in May, and I'm seeing a couple of games on there that I've been hearing about for a couple of years at least.
Yeah.
And like working on something for that long and not getting much back for your investment is really, it's a hard thing to commit yourself to. So, and you're mentioning ScreenWest is just getting into that sort of stuff, and it's great to see that it's not just ScreenWest but all of Australia with some higher level programs like the federal digital tax offset of 30%, and Screen Australia also getting in with some games with their games expansion pack as well. But let's talk a little bit about the Digital Games Production Fund, because I'm really keen to hear a little bit about the process that happens there, and some of the games that have already receive funding from this, and maybe some of your favorites from there.
Sure. So yeah, the first round that we did was sort of the first of its kind, where we had it was one funding round, but we had 3 different streams. So we had pre-production, production, and post-production streams. So each of them were designed specifically around different phases of development. So the pre-production was designed for if you have a great idea and a good game design document, but you don't have anything to show off for your game yet, getting some funding sort of to get that off the ground, get a playable prototype out there as something that you can then use to market your game or to apply for further funding, that sort of thing.
That's a very important thing, because like I sat in some panels at some previous PAXs and whatnot where they've got production studios, producers and distributors there, and they talk about a vertical slice. So they want to see something that your game is about and why they would invest in you. So being able to get to that production stage and have that to show off is very important for indie devs.
Yeah, because it's hard sometimes. Like if you really want to show your game idea, sometimes you can't really sell that until someone can get their hands on it and play it. And then if you don't have the funding or the support to get it to that stage, then you're fighting an uphill battle. So yeah, that's what the pre-production was about. And then production was obviously the big one, which was once you've got a game in development, sort of getting it over the finish line to release. And then post-production was once you've released a game, using some extra funding support for things like localization, porting, live ops, marketing, that sort of stuff that happens. We all know that once you release a game, it's not it and you wash your hands with it. There's still a lot of work to be done. So just some extra support there to get, some more out of the game that you've released.
Yeah. I know in particular, Necograms was the game that got the post-production support as part of the Digital Games Production Fund back in May. And that was on show at an expo I was at over the weekend, Pixel Expo. And I was involved with a heap of Twitch streamers that were there doing their thing. And more than one came back and said, I got so absorbed and lost in that game. So yeah, it's really cool when you get to this point and you've got that playable product that's almost finished and just seeing it be put out there in the world and yeah, just see people enjoying it so much.
Yeah, speaking of, you mentioned before if I had some favorites, and Necograms would be on there, and yeah, that team at Hungry Sky just done a really stellar job, and they've secured a spot in Apple Arcade as well.
Oh, nice.
So that game's doing really well and getting the recognition that it deserves, I think. So
yeah, that's really cool. And like I said before, like there's games on this list that I've seen before. Miska Tiny Tail has been on my radar for what seems like forever. Every time they release a new demo, I'm there playing it because I love it. It's just the feel around it is very cutesy, and it's the platformers that I grew up with and I love. So it's seeing that there. And Barton Lynch Pro Surfing, like that one in particular, talking to, and in a previous role I had at another outlet, we actually talked to the devs of that game, and learning about how they were programming it and how they've gone to get footage from the locations and things like that. So it's really cool to see these all coming along. And of course, we've got the second round of this coming up, and I must admit, I was hoping to get a little bit more time to have this chat because it is coming up on the 21st of August is the cutoff for round 2. So how are the applications going for that?
Yeah, good. We're seeing quite a few roll in for this round. There's less than last round, which I expected because this was sort of brand new, and I think the local industry weren't sure if they were going to sort of get this opportunity again. Everyone sort of jumped at the chance for the first round, and I was really excited that we could have a second round because there's still plenty of people out there who didn't get funding before that I think definitely deserve to get funding. And the amount of applications we had for the first round was just overwhelming. And there's only so much money that we have as well, so it was really tough during that round to sort of pick some winners. And there was some people that missed out that definitely had great applications, but there's only so much to go around. So hopefully this second round of funding can sort of help with some people who may have missed out last time, or some other people who weren't quite ready to submit yet for the first round and now have an opportunity for some funding.
It's always a hard thing, isn't it? Because it's not that their application was bad, it's that others were better, and that's a hard thing to say. What can I improve on to try and get in this time? And it's just like, well, what you had was really good. It's just that this was really, really good, and
that's a really tough part of it. Fortunately, it's not entirely up to me. So we have like a panel of external assessors that help out with the assessment process as well. So it's a pretty in-depth process to make sure that it's a fair and objective result for everyone who gets that funding. But at the end of the day, I still have to call people and say, I'm sorry you missed out. And I wish we had more money to fund them all,
Yeah, we don't have that unlimited bucket of money, unfortunately, and those decisions do have to be made. But that said, there are still some amazing games that have come out of the first round, and no doubt we'll see an equally high caliber of recipients come out of round 2. So that, again, if there's any indie devs out there watching, that is coming to a close on the 21st of August. So please get your applications in there through screenwest.com.au there too. There's also another one that I'm keen to talk about a little bit because I have a little bit of an idea of what it is, but I'd like to hear you kind of explain it a bit. And that's the Digital Games Business Accelerator. So can you kind of explain what a business accelerator is?
Yeah, so we were looking at sort of the funding that we received and the ways in which we could help the WA games industry the best we could. And one of those is obviously in funding projects, as we mentioned before with the production fund. But the other way that we wanted to help support studios is through a business accelerator program. So money designed to help the business and not focus on the project. So the best, example we have is a small studio that they've, just started working on a couple of titles, and they're increasing their capacity, and they want to take on board some new staff to sort of fill that capacity. But taking on new staff is a risk because you have to, train them up, and that comes at a cost. And, we don't want people in WA who have these job opportunities to miss out because someone's not willing to take that risk. And so we wanted to offer support for people to expand and grow their businesses, because we have a ton of developers in WA, but not many sort of bigger studios. So if we can back those studios to be able to, pay for new staff, we can start building some of these bigger studios through funding the actual businesses themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that, particularly with games, I feel are very well placed to do. You don't have to all be in the same location for it. So it's not something like the acting that ScreenWest would support as well, where the bulk of the Australian industry for that is over in Sydney. So you'd have to go over there if you wanted to get ahead, and then you'd have to go to America if you wanted to try and make it big there. Games development can be done from anywhere, and you see it with other Australian titles like Untitled Goose Game seemed to come out of nowhere from Melbourne studio. Cult of the Lamb was a huge game from Melbourne devs, Massive Monster there, and it's just being able to grow the WA industry in that regard can be done because you don't need to move away to support that industry. You can grow it here.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a couple of other funds that you're offering as well, and one that I'm particularly interested in because it does kind of tie into PAX, and I went to the PAX last year and absolutely loved it. And that's the Games Connect Asia Pacific, or GCAP, that happens before PAX, which is a big conference of game developers to get them in and having a chat with each other and doing some networking in development there as well. And it's great to see that you guys are offering some travel support for that.
Yeah, so that's something that ScreenWest does a lot in all sectors, and it's something that's definitely very beneficial in the game space, and that is support to travel. So this round in particular is funding support to fly over to Melbourne for GCAP, and this round in particular also comes with a complimentary ticket as well.
Nice, that's really good. And so with that sort of thing, is there a possibility for the devs to extend their stay and maybe present at PAX in the PAX Rising area there?
Yeah, so we basically cover the flights and the ticket for GCAP, and then basically if people want to stay on for PAX, which a lot of them probably will, then they can do that too. That was sort of the idea around it, is that people probably want to stay a bit longer for PAX. But we sort of had to focus our efforts on one or the other, and GCAP is the one that we really targeted. But I imagine a lot of studios will stay on a bit longer for PAX as well.
Yeah, and not like say you've got that limited bucket of money you've got to dole out, and really if you're looking to develop the WA games industry, GCAP is the industry event that you want to send them to. Yeah, it's great if they can get into PAX and show off their game, but GCAP's where they're going to make those industry contacts and learn a bit more about how the industry is going to operate there.
Yeah, definitely.
The last one that you guys offer some funding for, and this is ongoing, so this one you don't have to worry about applying for straight away, although I'm sure at some point in the future there will be a cutoff, but at the moment it's ongoing. It's for professional development. Now I really like this because everybody needs to learn how to grow in their industry, whether it's through learning how to use the programs like Unity, like Unreal Engine, or even stuff like business development, like we spoke about with the accelerator. So those professional development things are really important to make sure that the industry is sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, so this, as you said before, it's an ongoing fund that we have at ScreenWest that covers any industry that any screen industry that we support. So it's basically to help what we call them attachments. So have someone come on board to a company that hasn't worked there before and help pay in contribution to the company hiring them to sort of build up the skills of someone new in that industry.
That's really, really cool. So I'd like to get back to talk about the games a little bit, because like this is the bread and butter. Like knowing about all this stuff that you've got to help the games is great. But I'm keen to know, out of those 13 from earlier this year that received some funding from the Digital Games Production Fund, what were a couple of your favorites?
So a couple, as I already mentioned, there was Necograms, which is a favorite, and then you mentioned Miska Tiny Tail, which similar case for me. I'd followed that game, for years before I even had this job. So to see that one come through and then succeed really well in their application, that's a game that I think will do really well and that I really enjoy playing as well. Another favorite of mine that was sort of really an unusual one that really stood out to me was a game called Plong by Rob Gross, which actually released a couple of days ago on Steam. So that was one of the shorter production times, and it's a very unique game. It's an arcade style breakout / Pong hybrid, where you play as a Windows 98 computer virus rampaging through file systems, and it's super addictive, and the soundtrack is amazing as well. And so that was one that really stood out to me because it was just so different to a lot of the other ones that we were seeing. So I was happy to see that one go through, and it's out now. So that's a great outcome for us to see something release thanks to our funding and hopefully be successful out there.
That's really awesome. I love those stories, and I'm glad to see that that's out now. And don't forget as well, even if the games aren't out, if you go to Steam, chuck it on your wish list. That helps these games immensely, because it lets them go to investors when they're looking for money as well and say, look, we got this many people that have wish listed our game. They're wanting our game. Can you please help us? So it does help the games get out there. It helps the studios. So it's a little click for us, but for them, it's a metric that they can measure and say, here we go, please give us money, sort of thing.
Definitely.
Distill it. And I feel like people get into games dev because they love it. And it's a hard thing to talk about the money side, but you do really still need to talk about the money.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, I mean, I come from a game development background, and I wouldn't have this job either if I didn't love games and love making games. And there's other industries that are so passion led, like film and TV and animation. And traditionally it's been pretty tough in WA to rely on passion alone. As you said before, a lot of people working on games in WA have a full-time day job, and then they go and work on their passion projects at night and don't really see any financial results from that. So that's what we're hoping to change with some of this funding, is to build up that industry so that we can be one of the bigger players in Australia or even the world when it comes to game development.
That's great. I really love to hear it, and really love seeing the support that ScreenWest is putting out there for it. So I think that's about all we have to cover today, and we're heading towards the 20-minute mark, which I think is a nice little round number there. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to ScreenWest for providing these amazing grants for all our local indie studios.
No problem. Thanks a lot for having me, and appreciate it.